And Daniel put out his hand, and he just says, "Look, Colin," he says, "I don't want any problems." You know, he was dating an American girl, and they had a little boy together, and she was called Beverly. I can't remember what the little boy was called, but she was called Beverly. And he says, "I don't want any problems." And I says, "No, mate, it's nothing to do with you," you know what I mean? And he just says, "My brother," he says, "Gotsy's an asshole." And he said, "Freddie can be a dickhead," he says, "but," he says, "you're not going to have any more problems." So the only one I wanted to see next was Sabbath, because he had kicked David as well when David was down, and it was nothing to do with him, but he put the boot into David too. And so it kind of went quiet for a little bit. I just continued to dive and just have a good time, and go down, just go down to town, and I always walk the road. Stopped walking on the beach because there was loads of dark spots on the beach, and I just had a feeling that, you know, there could have been a couple of guys that would have maybe met me or jumped me on the beach, and all these guys carried knives. There had been a killing on the island. There was 2 Americans. One guy, no, the guy was British. He was ex-RAF guy, and he married an American woman, and they were on the island. They lived, I think, in the States or something like this, and the woman had been working for one of the ex-president's wives. I think they called her Ladybird Johnson, I think it was. And a couple of guys from the mainland were on the island, and they robbed this couple, and I think killed one of them, and one was found drowned beside the seawall on the island. And they robbed him for, I think, $30 or $40 and a gold chain. And they were caught, or the guy that killed him was caught getting on a puddle hopper on a plane to go back to Belize City the next morning. And he was jailed. He was sent to Hattieville jail. I don't know whether he got a death sentence or life in prison. I'm not too sure. But she was killed. That was the first time a tourist had ever been killed in San Pedro. But there was a few shady dudes down there that lived on the back of the island on the boat side that were the drug pushers and all the type of stuff, and you never really seen them. They used to be the guys that would run stuff to Belize City or Placencia or Kikok or wherever the fuck they were going, but I never really had anything to do with them. I know that Sabbath was a part of that clan, and I was gonna be having words with him too at some point. But the dive went well. My life just went back to normal. Dave was a bit more happier. You know, Dave went into town a bit more frequently with me. Him and I was seen quite a lot, and loads of people started speaking to me. You know, started fist bumping me. They had heard what had happened to Patojo. He basically had to live in a bit of shame, because he was a big fucking unit. I wasn't small. I mean, I was, you know, into the weights and stuff, and, you know, geared up and all that type of stuff. And I wasn't a small guy. I just had a mentality that I was never going to be bullied or taking shit from anybody again, because I'd had it my whole life in Northern Ireland, and I'd had that off my stepdad, and I just wasn't going to be taking it from anybody anymore, and I just wasn't going to have anybody fucking do that to David, and that was just the end of it. So there was no dramas. Everything went really well. There was loads of nights out for me and Dave. I think Sue was a bit relieved, to be honest, to know that David could, you know, go in out of the town and not be bothered, because it was really tough on Connor and Sean, seeing their dad smashed up and then having to lie and explain, you know, tell lies that David had hurt himself diving. And to see his boys upset and cry, because David's eye closed over, and his face was all swollen and purple on one side, and, you know, he got a pretty bad smashing. And for his 2 little boys to see him that way was more shameful for David than actually getting the kicking, because it wasn't the first beating David had. David had, you know, many fights when he was in the military, but for me it was really hard to see him that way, because to me David was so kind and you know, just such a nice person, and treated everybody with respect. You know, to see somebody do that to him, you know, and fucking leave him in that condition, that didn't sit well with me at all. So I was on the warpath, but things calmed down. You know, I saw Pato a couple of times. He just didn't look at me. I stared at him. He didn't look at me, and he just walked past. And there was no dramas with him at all. He actually apologised to David. David was telling me, it was a few months later, he just met David, and David thought they were going to go at it again. Everybody called David McGaffey. Didn't call him Dave or Mr. Dave, it was McGaffey. And so him and Sue were downtown one evening in Pedro, and his wife were there. And Sue had basically says, there's Pedro. And David was fucking geared up to go. You know what I mean? And David wasn't going to hold back this time because Sue was there. All for the sake of the boys. And Pedro says, McGaffey. And David turned around and he actually put his hand out and shook hands with David. And David shook hands with him. And that was the end of that with David and Pedro. There was never any more drama. They never spoke to each other again. They didn't have fucking wee showers in the early hours of the morning with each other. They didn't drink with each other. They didn't have conversation with each other. There was just no more drama. That was it. They passed each other and there was no drama. You know, there wasn't even a nod or anything. And that was it. That was over and done with. So the diving just went well. My life was really good. I met a girl, a local girl, and I started seeing her. A girl called Michelle, and things were just going really, really good. Seen her every now and then. Wasn't anything dramatic or anything like that. Life was good. I was making money. I was saving money. David and I had planned our first trip up to the States together to go up to Miami. And before that happened, I woke up one morning and I couldn't see. My eyes went blurred and I couldn't see a book. I couldn't see anything. I thought I was going blind. And I was 32 at the time. I think I'd been down in Belize about a year. I think it was coming into the summertime, June, July again, August maybe. And I just woke up one morning and I couldn't focus. And I made my way over to Dave's house. I could see, but I could see everything was blurred. I made my way over to Dave's house, and Dave started laughing at me. And I told him, I says, Dave, I can't see. And he said, fuck off, Carl, you silly bastard. And I says, I can't see properly, Dave. I said, my eyes are all blurred. And he was, really looked at me. He took me down to Dr. Guerrero in town. A real nice guy, ran the hyperbaric chamber. And he just looked at me and examined my eyes, and he says, I think you need glasses. That was it, just overnight basically. And so he tried his little doovies on me, ophthalmology glasses and stuff, and it turned out that I needed glasses, just basically overnight. I couldn't believe it. And so me and Dave made our way up to Miami a couple of days later. He took me to an ophthalmologist, and I ended up getting glasses. So I've been wearing glasses ever since. So that was that. I then had to adjust my mask goggles and had prescription lenses put in them, which was really weird. But unfortunately, that's just the way that life was. I then ended up, I think, using contacts for the first time. I think when the first contacts started coming out, I started using them, and I could see a lot better. I didn't tell anybody I was wearing contacts or anything like that, but that's how it went. So my life took another drastic change, a drastic step of fucking almost going blind. Still continue to dive, still continue to live life, no sign of Sabbath. Freddie became very friendly. He would stop and chat, and actually bought me a couple of Cokes and asked me could he sit down in my company. I said yeah. He turned out to be a pretty decent guy. He was just one of those guys that was just easily swayed with other people basically, and because Freddie was so small and so skinny and everybody around him was so big, I think Freddie just kind of needed an identity. But pretty soon after the falling out with me and his brother in Patojo, Freddie just changed. He just, not to say I had anything to do with that, I just told him, I says, Freddie, you just running with the wrong crew, and I says, you seem to be a pretty nice guy, you know what I mean. And he ended up being a nice guy, and David used him a couple of times for fishing. He was a really good fisherman. Dave started getting into the fishing, into the catamaran trips, into the jet skiing. They've expanded his business, started making shit tons of money. My wages went up again. I had my own boat, so Dave rented my boat off me to make a little bit more extra money. So the business expanded. We had 2 boats. We had the Manta 4. We had out island trips, a couple of jet skis, loads of dive gear. We started running trips to Altun Ha on the mainland, which was a Maya temple. So there was loads of things going on, and life became really good. The island seemed to prosper more, and the weather was still really good. We had a couple more tropical storms, and everything was really, really good. Ran into Taff a couple of times. Fucking oxygen thief. Never liked him. Amanda stopped working for Dave, and she went into real estate with her dad. He was into real estate, so she went into real estate with him. She started dating a big Scottish guy called Callum, who was ex-British military. He was an engineer. I think he was Scots Guards or something, and then became an engineer. So Dave employed him to drive the Manta 4, got rid of Tim. Tim ended up being a fucking liability. A nice guy, but ended up being a liability. Too many people were asking questions if he was drunk.